It's my fault.
Saying that, my mom looked down and was very skinny. She hasn't done a single thing wrong. So why does she have to suffer like this? I'll never forgive them. That day, I vowed to drag Kevin and Nancy down to hell. My name is Ashley. Recently, I had a dream about playing with my mom, Samantha, when I was little, and I woke up crying from the nostalgia. Back then, I was so innocent and pure. Now, I've become a bit bold and brash. This year, I'll turn 36. I wish I could stay young forever, but the wrinkles on my face only seem to deepen over time. Back in my late 20s, when I didn't have a single worry about wrinkles, I was inspired by career women and worked tirelessly. But then, some bad news unexpectedly came my way. It was about my older brother, Kevin, who's 3 years my senior, getting married. You might think a wedding announcement is good news, but Kevin has a troublesome issue that would make anyone grimace. Believe it or not, Kevin hasn't held a job for more than 3 years straight. By the way, that 3 years was only because Kevin managed to stick with his first job out of college. After that, it was jobs that lasted a month, 2 weeks, or even just 5 hours. Every time I look at Kevin, with his extensive track record of barely working real jobs, I can't help but wonder how there are still companies willing to hire someone like him. That said, I have a pretty good idea why Kevin keeps getting jobs. He's overly educated, smooth-talking, and still young. On top of that, he's smart with a lot of certifications. Companies that are always short-staffed and desperate for people tend to hire guys like Kevin, even if they have zero perseverance. But Kevin, being the kind of guy who will throw a fit if anything differs even slightly from what was promised in the interview, never lasts long in those environments. What he wants and what these companies expect just don't match. So the cycle of him quitting jobs continues. When I heard that this nearly unemployable Kevin was getting married, I couldn't bring myself to celebrate. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of eccentric person would choose someone like Kevin. And although I knew it was terribly rude, I was already looking at his yet unmet bride with skepticism before even meeting her. A normal person wouldn't marry a man who thinks it's fine to quit jobs without notice after turning 30. As his sister, I was even considering opposing the marriage, depending on who Kevin was marrying. But when I heard the reason for the wedding, I realized I had no choice but to accept it. Apparently, Kevin's partner, Nancy, was already pregnant. Kevin, who refuses to work, somehow managed to take on this unnecessary responsibility. How on earth is a guy with no money planning to support a family? On top of that, for reasons unknown, Nancy's family is apparently against the marriage and has even refused to meet Kevin's family for the introductions. Well, it's only natural. They probably can't accept an unemployed man as their daughter's husband. Honestly, I found their reaction to be completely reasonable. I was filled with helpless anger at Kevin's utterly thoughtless behavior. I just couldn't bring myself to wholeheartedly celebrate Kevin's marriage. So when Nancy came to our family home to introduce herself, I skipped the visit, using work as an excuse. Looking back, I realized that was pretty childish of me, and I decided to cool my head a bit. Next time I see Kevin and Nancy, I'll bring a proper gift and sincerely congratulate them. It's already done, so I need to adjust my mindset and move on. That's what I thought at the time, but later, I deeply regretted my decision and wished I had done everything in my power to oppose their marriage. A few months after Kevin's wedding, I decided to visit my parents' house since I had some time off during a long vacation. "Mom, I'm home.
Oh my, it's been a while. Have you lost some weight?
Really? I don't think so. I've been super busy after landing on big contracts. I've been eating out a lot lately because I've been getting home late, so I've probably gained weight instead.
Hey, are you taking care of yourself? You need to watch your health.
I know. It was the usual banter with my mom. I had been a bit worried about how she was handling Kevin's marriage situation, but she seemed fine, and that put me at ease. That night, however, my mom told me something shocking. What do you mean? The volume of my voice, raised in surprise, startled even me, and I quickly covered my mouth.
She didn't go to the doctor when she found out she was pregnant.
Why? According to my mom, Nancy wasn't actually pregnant. She had used a pregnancy test, gotten a positive result, caused a big commotion, and rushed into marriage. Later, when she went to the doctor, it turned out she wasn't pregnant after all. No way! How does that happen? Usually, the first thing you do is go to a doctor, right? Everyone knows pregnancy tests aren't 100% accurate. My tone grew harsher, but my mom tried to calm me down.
Well,
However, she seemed to agree with my point.
from what I've seen, their relationship doesn't seem very good either. Well, they're already married, so there's nothing we can do about it now.
My mom averted her eyes. Mom, were you against Kevin's marriage too? She seemed caught off guard by my question, her eyes widening slightly.
Who knows?
In the end, she avoided giving me a clear answer, but I got the sense that she hadn't fully accepted the marriage either. It seemed that Kevin's marriage was something no one but Kevin himself had truly supported. If our father, who passed away when we were young, were still alive, what would he have said? Would he have stopped the marriage? But no matter how much I thought about it, it was too late to change anything now. Well, as long as I keep my distance from Kevin and Nancy, there shouldn't be any major issues. That's what I thought and tried to look on the bright side. Then, something completely unexpected happened. I managed to take a decent break from work and decided to surprise my mom by dropping by the house unannounced. When I arrived, I heard a voice talking, so I headed to the living room, only to find Kevin and Nancy sitting there. I had planned to surprise my mom, but it turned out I was the one most shocked. Kevin, you're back too? And, well, you must be Nancy, right? Nice to meet you. To my surprise, my voice came out cold and awkward. The whole pregnancy, not actually pregnant ordeal had already left me with a terrible impression of Nancy, and it had only worsened over time. In my 30s now, I might have been able to handle this with a polite smile, but back in my 20s, I was embarrassingly bad at hiding my feelings.
Nice to meet you.
Nancy said politely, and if I judged her only by her greeting, she seemed like a decent person.
What? We're not here for a visit.
What? My mom spoke to me as I stared blankly in confusion at Kevin's words.
Kevin and Nancy are living here now.
That's how it is.
Kevin, you had your own place, didn't you?
Oh, well, it was easier to commute from here for work, so I started crashing here, and then it just kind of ended up this way.
Work. What are you doing now?
Unemployed.
In front of Kevin, who declared it without a shred of shame, I was left speechless. You didn't need to move back in if you weren't going to keep the job.
It's hindsight, isn't it? It could have worked out. At the time, I thought it would.
At least wait until you've held a job for over a year before saying that. You haven't stuck with anything recently.
Well, calm down.
Surprisingly, it was Nancy who tried to defuse the heated exchange between Kevin and me. A house guest acting like they're entitled to butt in. How dare she? Needless to say, I was a little annoyed. I didn't bother asking, but it was clear Kevin wasn't contributing to the household expenses. He'd always been an irresponsible guy who relied on gambling or others to get by. Now, it was obvious that he and Nancy were freeloading off my mom. Mom, you know it's okay to kick Kevin out, right? Don't coddle him just because he's unemployed.
It's not like that, Ashley. Honestly, I'm enjoying having them here, so it's fine. Really.
Of course, I couldn't help but doubt her words.
Don't worry about it, okay?
She just kept repeating that, so I let it go for the day. Well, if Mom says so. But by the end of the year, when I went back home for the holidays, I discovered that my mom's bedroom had been turned into Nancy's room. Somehow, Nancy already had 2 rooms in the house, and taking over my mom's room made it 3. Meanwhile, my mom had moved into what used to be my childhood bedroom, which Kevin had vacated after moving out. It was much smaller than her previous bedroom. The furniture hadn't changed either. She was still using the old bunk bed from my childhood. Since I'm petite, I could still use it. But it must have been uncomfortable for my mom, who's taller than me. I couldn't wrap my head around why the homeowner's living situation had gotten worse while the freeloaders were living comfortably. Mom, are you sure you're okay living with them? You're not unhappy, are you?
Of course not.
She'd said the same thing before when I called to check on her. But seeing her in person, I couldn't help but feel she looked more worn out, as if she was shouldering some burden. Still, she wouldn't share anything with me. I couldn't tell if I was overthinking it or if she was just putting on a brave face. Meanwhile, Kevin and Nancy, who I'd heard weren't getting along, now seemed perfectly happy together. They were so affectionate, watching TV and cuddling, that it was almost nauseating to witness. While I'd rather not see Kevin being lovey-dovey, I figured it was better than watching them fight, so I decided to let it slide. Hey, the last time I came home, you were unemployed, and now you're still unemployed? Stop freeloading off Mom and get a job already.
I can't get through the interviews.
To be fair, it's a wonder he was ever hired in the first place. Hearing Kevin's excuse, I couldn't help but feel oddly convinced. You're probably only applying to high-paying jobs, aren't you? Just start looking for something within your abilities. And I hate to say it, but Nancy should start working too. Nancy had been working at a clothing store the last time I came home. But by the end of the year, she was unemployed too. Can unemployment spread like a virus? Neither of them was working or even looking for a job. In other words, they were completely living off my mom and clearly planned to continue doing so. That was something I couldn't stand to let slide.
I'm just collecting unemployment benefits for now, so once they run out, I'll start working. Don't worry,
Nancy said with a smile. Saying she'll work only after the benefits run out is the kind of thing that would immediately get her disqualified if someone at the unemployment office heard it. Essentially, she was admitting she had no intention of job hunting in the meantime. I couldn't help but feel uneasy hearing Nancy speak so openly about it. On one hand, you could say she wasn't hiding anything, but I still couldn't get a clear sense of her character. I wasn't sure if I could trust her. For now, I figured the best thing to do was to wait and see how things played out. As long as my mom allowed Kevin and Nancy to live with her, all I could do was push them to start working and keep prodding them to take responsibility. Otherwise, I'd honestly want to kick them out of the house myself. A while later, I found myself swamped with work after having to take over for a senior colleague who had fallen ill. My days became incredibly busy, leaving me no time to visit my parents' house. Though I tried to check in regularly, I found it increasingly hard to get in touch with my mom. Whenever I called, Kevin or Nancy would tell me she was out. I couldn't help but feel skeptical. My mom wasn't the type to go out frequently. Maybe she was going out just to give Kevin and Nancy space, but it still worried me.
Tech gadgets are too complicated for me, so I don't need them.
That's what my mom had always said, and I'd respected her wishes by not getting her a phone. But now, I've decided that the next time I see her, I'll insist she gets one. For that reason, I've been eager to visit my parents' house soon. But lately, I've been stuck out of state on a long-term business trip ordered by my company, unable to even return to my own home. There hasn't been a single gap in my schedule to make time for a visit, leaving me in frustration as the days slipped by. By the time December arrived, I was still limited to phone calls as my only means of contact, which left me feeling restless. Fortunately, my work had settled down and my long-term trip had finally ended. Now I can confidently go home for the holidays. I was planning to visit my mom at the end of the year, excited to finally return to our family home, but things didn't go as planned.
Coming home? I think it'd be better if you don't this year.
Nancy said, taking the lead on the phone before I could even speak to my mom. Why not?
Well, actually, the house is being remodeled right now, and things are kind of a mess.
Nancy's vague and hesitant response only fueled my skepticism. No matter what she said, I instinctively felt her story was a lie and didn't believe her. Remodeling the house? With what money? If my mom had decided to renovate and paid for it herself, she would have definitely let me know. Since I hadn't heard anything from her, the only logical conclusion was that Kevin and Nancy were somehow paying for it. But after observing them for a year, I had seen no signs of either of them working. We'd even had heated arguments over the phone multiple times when I urged them to get jobs. They claimed they'd worked for a few months before quitting, but I didn't buy it. Even if what they said was true, their periods of unemployment were far too long. There's no way they could afford the costs of remodeling a house. Come to think of it, it had been 3 months since I last managed to contact my mom. Although I hadn't called every single day, I'd made over 10 attempts, only to be told she was out or asleep, and I was never once connected to her. Up until now, I had this strange faith that no matter what, things wouldn't go too far astray because we were family. But maybe I'd been too naive. With a growing sense of unease, I decided to ignore Nancy's excuses and visit my parents' house unannounced. It had been 3 months since I last got in touch with my mom.
Ashley, what are you doing here all of a sudden?
Kevin forced a smile, but the tension in his expression made it clear something was off. I was in the area, so I thought I'd drop by. It's about the time I'd usually come home for the holidays, and, well, I was feeling a bit lonely.
Showing up unannounced is a bit inconvenient. The place is a mess.
You're remodeling, right? But I don't see any contractor trucks around. I guess that makes sense. It's the holidays.
Oh yeah, right.
That's definitely a lie. I was sure of it. Kevin has a habit of swallowing hard when he's lying. The house looked exactly as it always did, with no sign of remodeling. Kevin and Nancy were clearly hiding something. I'm going inside.
Wait, hey, hold on.
When I forced my way into the entryway, Kevin desperately tried to stop me. But I didn't care in the slightest. I shook him off and headed straight for the living room. Mom? Where are you?
Ashley, you can't just barge in like that. It's rude.
Nancy grabbed my arm, trying to push me out. Excuse me, this might be your home, but it's my home too. I send Mom money to support her. You, on the other hand, are a freeloading, unemployed guest, so maybe don't act so entitled. For a moment, Nancy looked like she was about to argue, but she quickly fell silent. She probably couldn't think of anything to say in response. Why is Mom not here at this time? Every time I call, you say she's either out or asleep, but it's already dark. She wouldn't be out or sleeping now, would she?
She's out.
Mom wouldn't go out after dark. This area has so few streetlights, and she's always said she only goes out while it's still light.
That's...
Nancy faltered, and Kevin stepped in to cover for her.
Well, you know.
He clearly had no idea what to say, throwing out some vague nonsense. This is so irritating. Stop spouting bad lies and just get Mom now. When I raised my voice sharply, both Kevin and Nancy widened their eyes and, seemingly resigned, gave me an answer.
Fine. Mom's in the shed outside.
Kevin said with a dismissive laugh. The shed? I had a million things I wanted to say to Kevin, but now wasn't the time. I rushed out to the shed where they claimed my mom was. Mom? I rattled the poorly aligned sliding door, calling for her.
Ashley?
Then, I heard my mom's voice from inside. Yes, it's me.
Hang on. It's easier to open from this side.
My mom tried to open the door. Through the small gap she managed to make, I caught sight of her thin, frail arm. That one glance made it painfully clear that things were even worse than I had imagined. When the door finally opened, my mom stood there, her cheeks sunken. Mom, you're so skinny. She gave me a weak, troubled smile as I stood there, stunned. I couldn't stop myself from hugging her tightly. Why are you here? Don't tell me you're living in this shed. But my mom didn't answer my question. As my eyes wandered deeper into the shed, I noticed a bag of sandwich bread. Could that be her food? As I got closer to the bag, I saw one partially eaten slice of bread, while the rest were covered in black specks of mold on the surface. What is this? Mom, it's moldy. Are you seriously eating this? What about real meals? Not understanding anything, I bombarded her with questions one after another. But my mom only gave me a bitter smile in response. Mom, tell me, what's going on in this house?
It's nothing serious. The usual. It's my fault anyway.
As my mom lowered her eyes sadly, Nancy, who had apparently followed me, laughed from behind.
It's discipline. Right, Samantha?
Discipline? What on earth did Mom do?
Nothing, really. Just being here is a nuisance. Even when we tell her to leave, she won't go.
I was stunned by her words. This house belongs to my mom. It was Kevin and Nancy who forced their way in. There's absolutely no reason for my mom to leave. Why were they acting as if this house were theirs?
By the way, Ashley, you've been sending Samantha money, haven't you? She told us she only had savings. Lying about it is pretty mean. She could have just been honest.
It's true.
Kevin added with an annoyed say, following Nancy. Wait a minute. Don't tell me you two have been taking money from her.
Well, of course, since we live together, it's only natural to manage the finances.
Kevin and Nancy retorted, acting like it was the most obvious thing in the world.
She asked me if I had any savings, so I gave her money. That's on me. But if I didn't hand it over, they'd hit me.
My mom said that and lowered her eyes.
That's only fair. We're letting her live with us. It's like rent.
Exactly.
So what? Kevin and Nancy, you've taken mom's money, hurt her physically, and then forced her out here just because you want this house for yourselves? Furious, I couldn't help but raise my voice.
Yeah, so what?
Kevin replied nonchalantly, as if it were nothing.
It's Samantha's fault for being so clueless. A little roughness was necessary, don't you think?
Nancy added with a sigh, as if implying they were the ones being inconvenienced.
We're even kind enough to give her food, 1 loaf of bread every 2 weeks, and we let her use the bathroom once a day and the shower once a week. That's plenty generous.
Are you serious right now? Nancy's words left me completely speechless. When I looked at my mom, she avoided meeting my gaze. It seemed that everything Nancy said was horrifyingly true. A shower once a week, 1 loaf of bread every 2 weeks for food, and the toilet only once a day. Even prisoners live better than that. Most likely, the reason Kevin and Nancy, who were initially unhappy in their marriage, suddenly got along after moving into this house was because tormenting my mom became their way of relieving stress and bonding with each other. Why does my mom, who has done nothing wrong, have to suffer like this? It's unforgivable. I'll make sure you both rot in hell. As I muttered in a low voice, Kevin and Nancy turned to me and asked,
Did you say something?
I didn't answer and instead took my mom's hand and led her back to my car.
Ashley?
I'm sorry, Mom. For now, let's go back to my house. You can take a bath, and I've got some pre-made meals at home. Eat whatever you like. You can also use the bed and get some rest. I think you need it. I'm sorry to leave you alone for a bit, but I need to step out. I'll be back soon. My mom looked confused at first, but then she nodded in understanding.
All right. Just don't do anything reckless, okay?
She must have realized what I was planning to do. Of course. I took my mom to my house, got her settled in, and then drove directly to Nancy's parents' home. It turned out that during one of my earlier visits, Nancy and I had exchanged contact information.
Exchanging contact info is such a hassle.
Nancy said as she showed me her contact information on her phone screen. I found it equally tedious, but had snapped a photo of her screen just to be done with it. That photo included her home address. I entered the address into my GPS and soon arrived at what I assumed was Nancy's family home. Feeling a bit nervous, I rang the doorbell.
Yes, who is it?
A woman about my mom's age answered from inside the house. Hello, my name is Ashley. I'm Kevin's sister.
Kevin?
Kevin is Nancy's husband. I'm Nancy's sister-in-law.
Oh, I heard about the marriage, but I didn't realize you were the sister-in-law.
Sorry for the delay in introducing myself.
No, it's fine. Why don't you come in? It's better than standing here talking.
Nancy's mother, Michelle, invited me inside, and I gratefully accepted. This was going to be a long conversation. Once inside, I saw that Nancy's father, George, was also home, apparently off work for the day. Michelle and George had opposed Nancy's marriage to Kevin and even refused to attend the family introduction meeting. While it was possible they shared Nancy's personality traits, I decided to take a gamble. I laid everything out for them, explaining in full detail the abuse my mom had endured.
How could this happen? Nancy has caused trouble for someone else again.
George exclaimed, slamming his hand on the table. He was absolutely furious. Michelle grabbed my hand and said,
We're so sorry for what Samantha has gone through.
Ashley, I know an apology can't possibly make up for this, but we are truly sorry. I'll call Nancy right now and have her come over to apologize. Please wait.
With that, George picked up the phone and called Nancy. The situation was unfolding far better than I had expected, and I couldn't help but smile inwardly. About an hour and a half later, Kevin and Nancy showed up at the house, their faces pale.
Sit down.
George yelled, grabbing Nancy's arm and yanking her hard.
Ouch.
Nancy cried out, but George didn't care.
Do you even understand what you've done?
Nancy didn't respond, trembling silently instead.
You've been causing trouble since you were a child.
George shouted, slapping Nancy across the face. I had just learned this myself, but apparently Nancy's family came from a long line of educators. However, instead of being raised strictly, the children were allowed to grow up freely. Despite this, Nancy was the only one among her siblings who caused problems, bullying classmates, shoplifting, and even hurting a friend's younger sibling. No matter how much she was scolded, it never worked. Nancy seemed to enjoy causing trouble for others. At one point, her behavior was so extreme that George and Michelle worried she might be a psychopath. However, after consulting various therapists, they were told it wasn't a mental disorder, but rather a personality issue. The family had been at their wits' end dealing with Nancy's antics, and one day, the trouble she caused even made it onto the local news. That incident forced George to resign from his teaching position, and the family faced shame and ostracism from their extended relatives.
I told you the next time you caused trouble, you'd be disowned. I thought marriage might settle you down. But here you are causing problems again. Why are you always like this?
Nancy, now on the verge of tears, apologized.
I'm sorry. Please don't disown me.
Even someone like Nancy, often accused of being a psychopath by her own family, seemed to instinctively realize how dire the situation was this time.
I don't care. I was against your marriage from the start. There's no way you could ever be a proper wife.
Hearing George's words, Kevin tried to defend Nancy.
You don't have to go that far.
Hey, Nancy,
What?
Nancy replied, sounding slightly annoyed. I heard from George and Michelle that shortly before you married Kevin, you were fired for selling company computers, and it even became a police matter. Nancy swallowed hard and remained silent.
Wait, weren't you working at a clothing store?
Kevin asked, his eyes wide as he looked at Nancy. The background Nancy shared with Kevin and me is probably mostly lies. That incident was the reason George and Michelle made her promise to cut ties if she caused more trouble.
No way.
And the whole pregnancy thing? That was probably a lie too. These days, you can easily buy used positive pregnancy tests online.
How did you know that?
Oh, did I hit the mark? I was just making a point about how things like that are possible now. But it seems Nancy actually bought one. I'm impressed. I smirked sarcastically, while Nancy, her face pale, glared at me as if to say she'd been deceived. Just a little probing, and she fell for it so easily. How naive. But what I still don't understand is why you went to such lengths to marry an unemployed man like Kevin.
Because he was unemployed. I heard his mom was living off savings, and I figured if she was kind enough to tolerate an unemployed son, she'd probably be helping him financially. I was on the verge of being disowned by my own parents. I had a criminal record and no money. I was scared of what would happen to my life.
I see, I said, letting out a small, exasperated laugh. She really only ever thinks about herself. Meanwhile, Kevin looked visibly shaken.
So you married me for that reason?
You probably realized after the wedding, but Kevin isn't allowed to be unemployed. Your mom just ignores him because he won't listen, and she's not providing financial support.
I figured that out now. We forced our way into living with Samantha and tried to pressure her, but she didn't give us any money. Kevin turned out to be way more infatuated with me than I expected and followed my every word. But everything else about this marriage has been unexpected.
Have you noticed there's another unexpected issue?
What do you mean?
Honestly, you two are a perfect match. Kevin, you see, has borrowed money from several acquaintances in the past. Nancy's eyes widened in shock, but I continued without hesitation. He told them he'd pay them back, but never did. Eventually, they gave up on him and started coming to me, his sister, instead.
Just pay them back. It's not my problem.
Normally, you'd be right. A husband's debts don't have to involve his wife if she divorces him. But
What are you trying to say?
the people Kevin owes money to are, let's say, not exactly law-abiding.
What?
They're mobsters. Nancy froze at my words.
So what? That has nothing to do with me.
They said, if he has a wife, we can sell her and get some of the money back. Think you can outrun that? As I said that and gave a sweet smile, Nancy immediately turned pale, her eyes filling with tears.
You're lying.
She muttered weakly. I ignored Nancy's words and turned to Kevin. Kevin, how did you end up knowing people like that? Kevin fell silent for a moment. Kevin?
There was a time when I got recruited on social media for a job. They said all I had to do was deliver cardboard boxes to specific locations.
Wait, you mean? I once saw a news feature about couriers. Part-time workers were paid solely to transport packages under the condition that they never looked inside the boxes. The contents of the boxes were mostly illegal items, and the couriers were commonly referred to as part of the dark gig economy. I couldn't believe Kevin had been involved in something like that.
At the time, my boss offered to lend me money if I was broke. I quit the job quickly, but the money I borrowed kept accumulating interest, and now I can't pay it back. Since I can't keep a job, I've been borrowing from others to pay them back. It's a vicious cycle.
Kevin, Is your high-level education just for show? Is your brain even working? How could you be so gullible?
I'm sorry.
I'm beyond disappointed. Sorry, but I'm cutting ties with a criminal. Handle your debts and your sins yourself. No matter what happens, Mom and I won't help you anymore.
Got it. Nancy and I will manage together.
What? Not me. I want nothing to do with this.
Wait,
Kevin and Nancy stared at each other, their faces a mix of shock and anger as the unexpected argument erupted.
Don't you get it? I never loved you. I only married you because I had expectations about your family and their money. I'm divorcing you. I'm not sticking around with a criminal drowning in debt.
you're one to talk. You're a criminal too. You'll work with me and help pay off my debts.
All you care about is yourself. You're the worst.
Coming from someone who tried to live off my mom, you're no saint either.
Watching the two hurl insults at each other while ignoring their own faults, I couldn't help but fall silent along with Nancy's parents. They didn't care about the atmosphere around them and continued their ugly fight. What a disgusting spectacle. They're perfect for each other.
Enough. Take your fight somewhere else. You two are no longer our concern.
George roared, kicking Kevin and Nancy out of the house.
Please reconsider disowning me in this situation.
Nancy pleaded desperately, but George didn't spare her a second glance. And so, I finally managed to free my mom from the chaos that Kevin and Nancy had inflicted on her. After being identified by the people Kevin borrowed money from, Nancy ultimately couldn't divorce him. Apparently, she was heavily threatened by them. She has been forced to travel overseas and do other tasks to repay Kevin's debts. Honestly, I don't know exactly what she's being made to do. However, when I visited the two of them for one last matter, Nancy's eyes were vacant, and she looked like a shell of her former self. I can only imagine she's being made to endure things beyond what we can comprehend. As for Kevin, I haven't been able to contact him since that day. In reality, Kevin and I hadn't officially cut ties yet. I was planning to sever all contact, but Kevin hadn't turned himself in to the police, so I kept urging him to do so. I had planned to cut ties with him for good once I saw him turn himself in, but one day, he suddenly stopped responding to me. When I went to their house, it was empty. Kevin and Nancy had disappeared without a trace. I have no idea where they are now or what they're doing, but I'm certain they aren't living happily. Meanwhile, I built a house with a loan so I could live with my mom. Due to my work commitments, I couldn't move back to my mom's old home, and my apartment at the time was too small. Renting a different apartment was an option, but as my mom's mobility had been declining, I thought a house designed with accessibility in mind would be better. After weighing my options, I concluded that an apartment wouldn't work, so I decided to buy a house. Looking back, it was quite a decisive purchase on my part. Since I'd given up on getting married, I figured owning a home would be a good idea. However, last year, I met a man at a college reunion and ended up getting married. Interestingly, we had no connection during our university days. I only vaguely recognized his face. In fact, I don't think we had ever spoken until we were seated across from each other at the reunion. What's funny is that we later discovered he works for a company that does business with mine. And though neither of us remembered at first, we also went to the same kindergarten. Life has a strange way of bringing people together. He might be my soulmate. I had assumed I wouldn't be able to marry because no one would want to live with their in-laws, but he welcomed the idea of living with my mom. Now, they get along like real parent and child. In fact, they seem more like family than I do, to the point that neighbors have even mistaken my mom for his. I'm also expecting a baby, and by this time next year, we'll be a family of 4. With our days becoming more lively and joyful, I feel blessed and happy every single day.